What if your entire understanding of wealth was built on a lie? Not a minor misconception you can easily fix. A deep, foundational error. The kind of mistake that explains why a select few effortlessly draw prosperity into their lives, while the rest grind day and night, only to remain stuck on the exact same financial hamster wheel, moving constantly but getting nowhere. Right now, in this very moment, there is an individual out there, living in your neighborhood, with your exact background, perhaps taking home the same paycheck, who is quietly constructing an empire, steadily, reliably, without hitting a jackpot, inheriting a fortune, or using a shady connection. The secret isn't luck. It isn't raw talent. It isn't even pure willpower, at least not the way society defines it. The true variance lies in their connection to capital, and more critically, their perception of self-worth. Over the next few minutes, this audiobook is going to shift your internal wiring. We aren't using empty motivational slogans or detached theories. This is grounded in hard science, cognitive psychology, and concrete case studies that will force you to reevaluate every financial choice you've ever made, and every single one you make moving forward. This is the blueprint for financial transformation, and by the time we finish, your perspective on prosperity will be permanently altered. You have probably picked up a book on finance before, or at least intended to read one. Maybe it rested on your nightstand for a few weeks, got pushed back onto a dusty shelf, and eventually just blended into your room's decor. Most personal finance books fall into one of two traps. They either bombard you with dry economic terminology, asset allocations, compounding yields, and market trends, or they overcharge you with hype and temporary inspiration that fizzles out by Tuesday morning. This volume is completely different from either of those. Chapter 1. The Money Mindset Myth. Let's address a reality that might be a bit uncomfortable to swallow. The psychological mindset trend of the past 2 decades has accomplished something fascinating. It took a valid, essential concept, the reality that our internal paradigms dictate our external habits, and diluted it into a commercialized self-help movement. Just project positive thoughts, visualize your ideal mansion, and summon your millions out of thin air. It markets incredibly well because it makes people feel instantly validated. But herein lies the trap. For vast populations, merely thinking positively has become an easy replacement for actual execution. People spend half an hour every morning journaling about infinite abundance, while their banking accounts remain frozen and their high-interest debts accumulate silently. Your mindset isn't the finish line. Your mindset is simply the automobile, and just like any vehicle, it remains motionless if you never turn the ignition and press the gas pedal. An investigation featured in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology revealed that individuals who purely daydream about hitting their milestones without contrasting those dreams against their current limitations actually underperform compared to those who map out both the objective and the hurdles. Pure optimism without a reality check manufactures an illusion of advancement. Picture 2 individuals aiming to retain $10,000 within the next 12 months. Individual A visualizes the balance on their screen, radiating joy and cultivating an abundant vibe. Individual B shares that exact vision, but immediately sits down to audit every dollar leaving their wallet, isolating 3 distinct spending leaks to plug, and sets up an automated direct deposit to their savings account every single payday. Half a year later, individual A remains highly inspired, but has only retained $800. Meanwhile, individual B has $4,600 secured in the vault. Same initial goal, completely contrasting outcomes. The variance? Individual B utilized their mindset as a launching pad rather than a resting place. Therefore, the foundational rule of turning into a wealth magnet is this: right thinking is mandatory, but it is never sufficient on its own. You require both the cognitive shift and the physical execution. Furthermore, the internal pivot must happen first, because without it, any external effort remains short-lived, erratic, and highly vulnerable. We pour the concrete foundation long before we design the rooftop. That is the core mission of this guide. Chapter 2: Your Money Blueprint. Close your eyes for a brief moment, or don't if you are on the move. Just allow your thoughts to travel backward in time. Reflect on the very first memory you possess regarding financial capital. Not the structured lessons from school or something you read online, but a raw, living moment. Perhaps it was your parents experiencing stress over stacks of bills at the dinner table. Maybe it was watching a grandparent meticulously double-check pennies before paying at the grocery register. Or maybe it was the phrase, "We can't manage that expense," repeated so frequently it turned into the soundtrack of your early years. Those instances didn't just fade away into the past. They left a permanent imprint. They constructed what experts define as your financial blueprint, the underlying network of subconscious habits and emotional triggers relating to wealth that were hardwired into your psychology before you ever had a say in the matter. And here is the pivotal factor. Your underlying blueprint dictates every economic choice you make today from behind the curtain. Every time you buy something on a whim, or every time you accidentally disrupt a positive streak of financial growth, your blueprint is at play. Take Sarah, for instance. She spent her childhood watching her father work brutal hours while constantly projecting anxiety about making ends meet. The unspoken lesson she integrated deep down was clear. Wealth demands immense suffering. You must drain yourself to accumulate money. As an adult, Sarah became incredibly driven, highly skilled, and earned an excellent salary. Yet, every single time her savings account approached a significant milestone, she subconsciously found a mechanism to deplete it: an unexpected home upgrade, an overly extravagant present for a relative, or a last-minute luxury getaway. Each item seemed rational on its own, but combined, they kept her financial boundaries locked exactly where her childhood blueprint dictated she belonged. Once Sarah pinpointed this recurring cycle during a professional development session, she broke down. It wasn't out of grief. It was out of sheer realization. She finally comprehended why she had been fighting an internal war against her own progress for a decade and a half. Your historical blueprint was written by your past environment, but you hold the pen to compose the upcoming chapters. That is the restructuring work we are executing right now. Here is an inquiry to analyze once this chapter concludes. What is the primary emotional memory tied to currency from your upbringing? Document it. Enunciate it clearly, because you can never rewrite a narrative that you refuse to read in the first place. Chapter 3. The Magnetism Principle. Let's look at basic physics. A magnetic force doesn't actively pursue iron. It doesn't sprint, plead, or negotiate. It simply holds its polar alignment, and whatever aligns with its field is naturally drawn in. High net worth individuals are not out there desperately chasing dollars. Instead, they have configured their habits and environments so perfectly that wealth organically clusters around them. This isn't esoteric magic. This is behavioral architecture, cognitive science, and habit tracking operating in perfect harmony. Consider what empirical data demonstrates. A comprehensive study from Harvard Business School focusing on wealth creation discovered that the prime metric for predicting multi-decade financial stability was not initial income level. It was an attribute known as financial self-efficacy, the deep-seated certainty that you possess the competence to control, expand, and direct capital wisely. People possessing elevated self-efficacy frequently started with lower pay, yet systematically generated superior net worth because their core certainties dictated their daily choices. The mechanism of attraction operates on 3 distinct tiers. First, absolute mental transparency. Prosperous individuals evaluate financial options from a foundation of logic. Never panic. They utilize fixed objectives, streamlined protocols, and an understanding of market volatility that keeps them from freezing up. Second, energetic configuration. This might sound abstract, but it's highly pragmatic. It implies that your everyday vocabulary, your circle of influence, and your immediate habits either broadcast a frequency of abundance or one of severe limitation. Third, behavioral iteration. Not dramatic, erratic transformations, but those quiet, daily 1% modifications that gradually compound into massive life overhauls. Let's look at this mechanism in action. Mark had a respectable corporate salary, but possessed 0 assets at age 38. He initiated his journey with a single, minor modification. Every morning, he dedicated 5 minutes to observing his monetary targets. No obsession, just focused observation. Next, he programmed an automatic $200 monthly transfer directly into a low-fee investment portal. He completely eliminated phrases like, "I'm awful with budgeting," from his everyday conversations. He committed to mastering just one financial concept every single week. Fast forward 3 years, and he had secured $28,000 in principal savings. Chapter 4. Scarcity versus abundance. The internal war. There are 2 primary operating systems that can dictate your economic consciousness, and the majority of people never consciously select their default software. It was pre-installed by external forces decades ago. The framework of scarcity constantly whispers, resources are severely limited. There isn't enough capital, enough opening doors, or enough time to go around. Because resources are scarce, you must hold on to what you possess with a white-knuckled grip, execute choices from a foundation of anxiety, and interpret the wins of your peers as a direct reduction of your own potential. Conversely, the framework of abundance declares, opportunities are infinite. The economy is not a fixed pie where a slice gained by another means a loss for you. Someone else's massive achievement is simply empirical validation that success is attainable, not a sign that your slice has been stolen. Under this paradigm, you can distribute capital intelligently without anxiety, allocate investments without jumping ship during a dip, and give back to others without feeling compromised. Neuroscientific research has validated these states right down to the gray matter. Scarcity-driven logic overactivates the amygdala, the primitive fear and survival engine of the human brain. This neurological hijacking quite literally degrades your capacity to process multi-layered decisions. A historic paper published in the journal Science demonstrated that acute financial anxiety burns up cognitive processing power equivalent to a 13-point drop in functional IQ. When you are drowning in money stress, you are trying to navigate life with a severely restricted cognitive engine. This is precisely why advising low-income populations to just formulate better budgeting choices is not merely unhelpful, it is scientifically inaccurate. The sheer cognitive weight of survival degrades the precise mental processing tools required to break free from the loop. Let's look at how scarcity and abundance play out in everyday reality. Two co-workers receive an identical, unexpected corporate bonus of $500. Tom, who operates on a scarcity loop, immediately panics. I need to lock this away because something is bound to break. He parks it in a basic checking account, never creates a strategic plan for it, and gradually erodes the sum on minor, unrecorded daily expenses over the span of 8 weeks. Meanwhile, Aisha, operating on an abundance loop, thinks this represents capital seed. She segments it deliberately. $200 goes straight to her baseline safety reserve. $200 is routed into an index fund. And $100 is allocated to a professional training seminar she's been tracking to boost her corporate value. 36 months down the line, that $200 investment has matured to $380. The specialized course unlocked a major corporate promotion, and her emergency fund routine has snowballed into a steady $3,000 cushion. Exact same initial $500, entirely different core operating software, radically distinct destinies. Transitioning from scarcity to abundance isn't about wearing blinders to real-world friction. It's about a firm refusal to let the anxiety of limitation steer the wheel of your financial choices. You can find yourself in a tight economic corner and still maintain an abundant strategic perspective. That specific intersection, uncompromised realism paired with a visionary heart, is precisely where systemic transformation takes root. Chapter 5: The Wealth Identity Shift. Here lies the most paradoxical concept within this entire audio program. You can never construct sustainable prosperity if your underlying self-image is rooted in financial lack. Identity dictates your revenue ceiling, always. The core reason an overwhelming percentage of sudden lottery multimillionaires revert right back to their baseline financial status within 5 brief years isn't due to simple recklessness or bad luck. It occurs because their underlying identity, their subconscious self-map, never evolved to match their external bank statements. The sudden influx of cash felt alien, temporary, like borrowing someone else's wardrobe. Consequently, they unconsciously engineered scenarios to burn through the capital and return to familiar psychological territory.
Dr. Tara Swart, a leading neuroscientist and behavioral author, clarifies this dynamic via a neurological process known as value tagging. Your brain is continuously filtering an avalanche of environmental data based on what it deems relevant to your core survival. If your internal identity insists, "I am someone who struggles financially," your sensory systems will literally screen out high-value opportunities, strategic discussions, and lucrative partnerships. Not because those opportunities don't exist right in front of you, but because your identity instructed your brain's filtering mechanisms that such realities do not belong to you.
Shifting your financial identity isn't about looking in the mirror and shouting fabrications. It's about executing a sequence of microscopic, authentic corrections that gradually align your self-concept with a persona that orchestrates capital with sophistication, poise, and deliberate intent. Let's look at this identity transition in practical terms. Begin with your daily lexicon. For the next 7 days, meticulously track every single instance you utter or think ideas like, "I could never afford that." "Finances are a nightmare for me." "Wealthy individuals just got lucky breaks." "Money is the root of misery." These are not passive, harmless remarks. They are active identity commands. Invert them immediately, not with absurd fabrications, but with calculated reframes. "I am actively prioritizing my capital elsewhere right now." "I am in the process of mastering advanced wealth management." "I study and respect those who have built empires ethically." These are subtle shifts, but multiplied hundreds of times over a standard week, they initiate a profound rewriting of the neural networks linked to your economic self-image. Within a matter of months, you will observe a natural evolution in your daily habits, not because you are forcing compliance through sheer willpower, but because your baseline self has changed. You aren't attempting to project a fake lifestyle. You are integrating the precise identity that makes wealth sustainable. There is a grand canyon of difference between the two approaches. Chapter 6: Money in Motion: The Action Framework. Every single philosophical concept explored in this audiobook remains utterly worthless without physical execution. We aren't talking about massive, chaotic actions like handing in your resignation notice tomorrow to build an unvetted startup. We are talking about microscopic, unyielding, compounding execution. Here is your operational blueprint. Step 1. The Zero Judgment Audit. Dedicate 20 minutes this week to dissecting your previous 30 days of transactions. Do not do this to cultivate guilt or self-loathing. Do it strictly to gather raw data. What behavior patterns manifest? Where is your hard-earned capital slipping away without your explicit approval? Step 2. The 50-30-20 structural realignment. Route 50% of your net income
toward non-negotiable needs, allocate 30% toward lifestyle wants, and channel 20% strictly toward future wealth architecture, debt eradication, investment accounts, and liquid reserves. This concept isn't brand new, yet the vast majority of society has never actually executed it. Most populations default to a system where 100% of their incoming funds are absorbed by immediate needs and impulsive wants, leaving wealth construction to whatever scraps remain at the end of the month, which historically equals 0.
Step 3. Automate a single prosperity habit this week. Program an automatic transfer of $50 on payday. Configure a recurring micro-investment portfolio. Make the process completely hands-off so it never drains your mental willpower, which happens to be your most depleted internal resource by the time you wrap up a long workday. Consider the automated savings tool Digit, which quietly pulls micro amounts based on real-time consumer habits. It has guided over 1 million everyday users to secure a collective $5 billion in capital, most of whom historically sworn they lacked any spare funds to save. The money was always present within their cash flow. The automation simply rendered it invisible enough to protect it from their own spending habits. Chapter 7. The Compound Effect of Small Decisions. Darren Hardy composed a famous thesis titled The Compound Effect, and its core premise represents one of the most critical financial pillars you will ever encounter in your lifetime. Minor, seemingly trivial habits executed with absolute consistency over extended horizons yield monumental transformations. The mathematics behind this isn't sorcery. Retaining a mere $5 every single day aggregates to $1,825 across a standard year. When channeled into an investment vehicle generating a standard 7% annualized return over a 30-year career, that single micro-habit balloons into more than $170,000. That fortune didn't manifest from a sudden corporate windfall. It emerged entirely from small, daily choices made differently. However, the laws of compounding operate ruthlessly in both directions. That extra $5 daily premium coffee, that $12 automated food delivery surcharge, the forgotten digital application subscription you never cancel, the escalating interest on a credit card balance minimum. These micro-negatives compound just as fast. They never feel catastrophic in the moment, and that is precisely what makes them incredibly dangerous. Consider individual A, who leaks $200 every month on mindless, minor transactions, impulse convenience store items, unutilized platforms, and digital microtransactions. Individual B redirects that identical $200 premium directly into a low-overhead, broad market index fund. At the conclusion of a 10-year block, assuming a standard 8% mean return, individual A has completely dissolved $24,000 with absolute zero equity to show for it. Conversely, individual B is looking at a verified asset worth $36,589. The variance here was never their base income level. It was the compounding reality of daily micro decisions, born from a completely different internal identity. Chapter 8. Protecting your magnetic field. You can construct the most formidable wealth-attracting psychology on the planet and still watch it get completely dismantled during a single holiday dinner with the wrong social circle. This is the specific chapter that standard authors avoid because it demands brutal, uncompromising honesty. Jim Rohn famously articulated decades ago that you inevitably become the mathematical average of the 5 individuals you associate with most frequently. Landmark sociological research out of Harvard confirms this reality at a systemic level. Financial methodologies, consumer habits, debt tolerance, and investing paradigms propagate through immediate social webs, much like a biological virus. This reality doesn't dictate that you heartlessly abandon your family members or turn into a cold, transactional networking machine. It means you must become fiercely protective of the data inputs you allow into your subconscious mind. Who are you consulting when making financial plans? What flavor of digital media are you digesting daily? What social dialogues are quietly validating a scarcity mindset and making you feel isolated for aiming higher? Let's look at environmental defense in action. Sandra had been meticulously cultivating her prosperity mindset for 6 months straight, devouring literature, tracking her habits, and allocating capital consistently. Then, she fell into a routine weekly habit of venting sessions over coffee with a childhood peer who harbored deep bitterness regarding financial success. The whole system is rigged. Why even bother saving? The wealthy are all corrupt. Just maximize pleasure today, because tomorrow is doomed. Within 6 brief weeks, Sandra had quietly halted her automated investment accounts, signed a lease on a luxury vehicle she absolutely did not require, and completely abandoned her financial education routine. She hadn't made a single deliberate choice to sabotage her future. Her immediate human environment had simply recalibrated her identity down to a lower frequency. Breaking the pattern required conscious awareness. It was the most pivotal financial turning point of her adult life. Chapter 9: The Money Magnet Manifesto. We have traveled an incredible distance together throughout this program. You now fully comprehend that right thinking is the vehicle, not the ultimate destination. You recognize that your baseline financial blueprint was sketched during your formative childhood years, and that you hold the absolute authority to rewrite that narrative. You understand that high net worth individuals aren't lucky anomalies. They are structurally aligned. You know that scarcity loops physically degrade your higher brain functions, whereas abundance thinking is a form of calculated neural restructuring. You realize that identity must always precede revenue expansion. You see how micro actions compound into macro destinies, and that your social environment is either feeding your prosperity or silently draining your reserve. Now, I want to equip you with a core psychological tool to carry forward, a declaration that distills this entire journey and makes it uniquely yours. This is the Money Magnet Manifesto. Absorb it. Voice it aloud. I am an individual who orchestrates wealth, not through random luck, but via identity, conscious intent, and unyielding daily habits. I fully discharge the outdated financial blueprint of my past. It fulfilled its historical role, but it no longer defines my path. I execute strategic choices from a foundation of abundance. Never panic. Even during high-pressure moments, I choose transparency over fear. I am an exceptional steward of capital. I respect its utility, direct it with sophistication, and grant it absolute permission to compound. I aggressively defend my financial environment. I selectively permit inputs that elevate my consciousness and my tangible results. Commit to one single physical action today, because real momentum is never about making a single monumental leap. It is about refusing to halt your forward progress. You chose to listen to this audio track for a reason. An internal element of your consciousness already recognized that a higher reality was waiting for you. That inner recognition is your financial magnetic field activating in real time.
Thank you for tuning in to this production by Wise Leaf Audiobooks. Distribute this audio track to someone who truly needs to hear this truth today. And always remember, true wealth is never a static destination. It is a precise way of navigating through the world. Until our next session, keep building, keep expanding, and keep attracting every bit of prosperity you deserve.